Hi, everyone. Welcome back. This is our second episode of Happy Couples. My name is Nardine, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist.
And I'm Vitalij, husband who is married to marriage and family therapist. So we want to talk to you guys about some other topics at this time when you saw us at the first episode, where we talk about why modern marriages are failing. Today we want to talk to you guys about, do you want to start? Do you want to pick up the first?
Sure. Here we go. 5 ways
To prioritize your marriage. So we're going to talk about those things, and some of them they're not hard and fast rules. These are just some of the ways that we personally try to implement in our relationship. We see that we have other friends who do the same. They implement similar things. And again, not the only ways, but some of the ways. And some of them you might want to do multiple of them. Some of them maybe you can do only one. It all depends where you are in your relationship, in your stage.
Yeah, totally. I think that one of the things that we were talking about is that, especially if you have young children, now that school is in session, it can be tough for couples to really prioritize because there's so many things going on. I'm thinking even within our family, we have gymnastic and soccer and so on and so forth. For some of you may have piano lessons, and depending on the ages of your children, there are so many things that are going on throughout the week and that is vying for your attention, and you actually have to be really, really intentional at prioritizing. So I think, like you said, it depends on what stage you're in your relationship. And that's something you have to talk about and seeing, okay, what do I value? How do we prioritize first and foremost? What does that look like?
So we're going to start with the very first one, creating rituals. And you may think about, well, what rituals are. So we're not talking specifically about something from a religious perspective, but it's more of what's going to be helpful in you and your family. For example, like we all celebrate Thanksgiving. It's a kind of ritual for all of us who live in the U.S. So, what do you think kind of first type of ritual that we personally do that helps us in our relationship?
In terms of rituals, I was thinking about the fact that some couples may choose to, have tea time, whether it's like at nighttime or, watch a favorite show, for example. And those rituals may not necessarily be weekly. It could be something that they do monthly. It could be something like a hike. Some couples love to hike together, and that's something they can set up and go hiking every month, or watch a favorite movie every month, or just simply cuddle on the couch with a cup of tea. As simple as that. It doesn't have to be something that takes so much planning to the point where people don't end up doing anything because it just seems so hard to actually put that into practice.
I can think of one too, where I know some couples, they really love going to movies. It's one thing to be able to watch movies at home, right, in front of your TV and maybe with a family. But another one is actually going to a movie theater. And, you can buy movie passes now that, you can see 4 or 5 movies a week if you want to, or, whatever the number per month. And so we have actually friends who like going to see movies. It's kind of one of the things that they do. And sometimes they invite other friends also to join them to make it more like a daytime. But, whatever works for you when it comes to a ritual, like Nardine mentioned, maybe it's a coffee time. Maybe you might be like reading a book together. You like going on a hike. Maybe even doing something with the kids if you have children at the point where you can kind of make it your thing in your relationship. So creating whatever ritual you think might be helpful for you to build that emotional intimacy with each other, those things are pretty valuable.
Yeah. So we're going to move on to number 2, daily check-in. So when we're talking about daily check-in, is that time where well, first of all, I'm thinking that even before leaving for work, the hello goodbyes are so important, to give a hug or give a kiss goodbye, things like that is so important because just that physical touch is so it does something. Actually, there's research has shown that. I'm going to read that to you. Research shows that it takes 5 to 10 seconds of a hug to release the bonding chemical oxytocin, which is that thing that makes you all fuzzy inside when you feel close to someone, just by giving a hug. So I think that even practicing that is so important for couples to remember, in terms of that daily check-in.
So, one of them, I think, what I try to usually do is when I go to work, I have a certain breaks, or maybe at lunchtime, I would give Nardine a call and just to check in on her and the kids and how things going, because we have two of our older ones already in school, and the youngest one, who is 2, he's still at home, and so Nardine sometimes has, different activities with him during the day, grocery shopping, cleaning up at home. Sometimes the kids might be sick. So I try to make it more of my priority to check in on her, on the kids. Sometimes it's maybe if I stay at work a little bit later, I try to check in the kids too, let her know my status of me coming home. So be able to check in, I think it kind of helps you prioritize and let your spouse know that you're thinking of them, that you care for them, and they kind of makes them to expect you home, and kind of, like Nadine mentioned, creates this nice and fuzzy feelings. Another one I do want to mention is simply, maybe it's kind of relates more to ritual, but every time I leave for work, I try to make sure that I give hugs and kisses to my kids. And they just love that. I mean, it's like one of the things that I cannot leave my house unless I'm leaving like super early when they're still sleeping. So I can't leave my house without not giving him hugs and kisses.
Yeah, or as soon as they hear the door opening, even if they're sleeping, they run downstairs because they want to be able to say bye.
Yeah.
That's special. So, well, another thing I thought about as well is that in terms of the whole check-in is the fact that when the kids go down, that is such a nice time to have as a couples. Even if it's not a chunk of time, it can be like 15 minutes of uninterrupted time, whether it's after you put the kids down or even before bed, while you're in bed, checking in and finding out how the day had gone for the both of you, and just maybe the struggles you have gone through throughout the day. I think that's really important to have that daily check-in in that way. Yeah.
So number 3, one of the ways to prioritize your marriage is weekly meetings. And I gotta tell you, I am pretty good with that stuff.
Yes, you are.
Not because it's something I really enjoy, but because it's something that's built in my job. Where I work, we have meetings all the time. And one of the things that helps us to prioritize our relationship is, unless we set the time, for example, to maybe get up early, have a cup of coffee together, talk about the day, and maybe discuss certain concerns, issues. Unless we set this time, it's unlikely to happen. So kind of like at my job, unless I set the meeting on the calendar, it's not going to happen. So be able to set up those weekly meetings, and they don't have to be long. So what's a typical time frame that we usually have? Half hour, 45 minutes when we have those kind of meetings together?
I mean, like you said, there's no hard and fast rule for these things. I think it depends on what works for every family.
Yeah.
And I think for us, what we do, we try to wake up super early before the kids get up because we know their schedules. And so we know, okay, if we wake up at this time, we'll have this chunk of time to be able to talk. And so I think it all depends on what works for each family. But I think I totally agree with you in terms of saying that making it a priority, being intentional, and treat it as if it's like a work meeting, because we wouldn't just blow off any work meeting.
Right.
And we shouldn't blow off our, like what is meant to enhance and connect us as couples, where we have those time to really talk through maybe the things that have happened throughout the week that we haven't had time to talk through. And and even saying that, we have some pointers in terms of what can help in when you're sitting down at those weekly meetings, what that can look like. Did you want to take the first?
Well, so what maybe the pointer a little bit here is Depending on your schedule, because some of you guys might be, you may be working nights, or your schedule is kind of passing by, and you're seeing each other for a few hours during the day. You might be working from home, and your spouse might be working at an office or some other place. So for us is we usually set our time. Saturday mornings is the best time for us, all right? Because our kids tend to sleep in those days, and so we would wake up 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and knowing that the kids, while they're still sleeping, we know we're not going to be interrupted. Be able to make it non-interrupted time. This is kind of what makes the meeting happen, because I think about my meetings at work, when we usually set up the meeting in the conference rooms. This is kind of the time slot where people will not interrupt you, because you might be making important decisions. Like at home, you might be talking about your budget. You might talk about what you want to do for the weekend. Things like that. But for you, it could be during the day. It could be during the week. Whatever works for you. So pick the time slot. Set up the meeting once a week, and it's really gonna enhance your relationship. Kind of prioritize some of those things, and both of you guys will be happy.
Yeah. And what I would also add in terms of tips in terms of that piece is that when you sit down to talk, make sure that you share 2 to 3 things that you are encouraged by in terms of what your spouse has done, and or things that you admire about your spouse. Like, just really making sure that there are positive and negatives, like kind of balance it all out, where you're just not coming out and say, well, these are the things that I struggle with throughout the week, and these are the things that needs to be worked on, but really kind of priming each other and just really building each other up so much more than the issues that you might bring out. I think that's really, really important to sort of like put that, what would you say, like the emotional deposit in there for each other. And when you do discuss things that might have been hard throughout the week, making sure that it's stated in a way that it doesn't come across as judgmental or critical,
Yeah.
but just, even in the form of asking a question, as opposed to saying, well, you and you did this and you did that, and but really come at it at a place where you are inquiring and wanting to work as a team.
And I would say, like Nardine mentioned, share 2/3 of positive things and maybe 1/3 of negatives. So I think one note of caution to take here is that depending where you are in the relationship, if if you're having too many bumps for whatever reason, you're just not having a good day, not having a good week, make it happen that maybe you want to share 9 positive things about your spouse and just maybe 1 negative. You want to start it somewhere and build it up. Whatever works for your relationship. Hopefully know your spouse well enough to be able to have the
Yeah.
comfort level to share. So the next one we're going to talk about, and we feel this is super critical, especially for most men, is sexual intimacy. I'm not going to throw this one out.
You're gonna hold on to that one?
I'm going to hold on to this one
Okay.
as a reminder. Save this up. But so sexual intimacy in a relationship. So why don't you start here first?
Okay. So I think, we talked a little bit about like the whole hugging and that statistics,
Yeah.
and for some couples, the one time that they, a lot of times they find that they're not very physical with one another. When they do end up being physical, it's more like a precursor to intimacy, as opposed to doing those things on a day to day. And I think that sometimes it can impact a couple's level of intimacy if they're not being physically close, apart from that, that moment when when they're wanting to have, intimacy. But when I think about intimacy and we have intimacy and sex, I think those two things are really different, because intimacy is about closeness and how the person feels close to you, and those things are things that couples have to actually talk about, because how you might feel close to me is different than how I feel close to you. So in order to have intimacy, you need to talk about these things. You need to discuss what's important to you. How do you feel close to your partner? So it's really important. Just because you might be having sex doesn't mean that there's also intimacy. So I think it's important to differentiate those two and how important that is.
And one quick tip for the guys is, I think what's important to realize is that sexual intimacy doesn't start in the bedroom. It really starts a lot of times way before that. Maybe that morning, during the day, you want to come home with the flowers. You want to help at home with the kids. You want to kind of send an encouraging message to her to let her know that you're thinking of her, that you're looking forward to see her tonight, and spend time with the kids. Whatever you might be happening in your day.
Yeah.
And because for women, it really starts in their minds. It doesn't start so much as for us. We are visual beings, and it's very easy for us to get excited and just feel like, okay, we're ready. But for women, is to be able to kind of slowly, you try to bring them in and be able to connect, kind of like maybe create more of an emotional intimacy before it transitions into a bedroom. So, so that's kind of what I'm thinking about sexual intimacy. Now, what do you think as far as a frequency? What's healthy? What's not healthy? And maybe there's a difference in age, perhaps, and how long people have been married.
I don't think it's age. I think it's just the simple fact that each couple is so different. I think each couple's sexual desires are different. So that's something that each couple are going to, they're going to have to figure out on their own. That's where that communication comes in. That's so important to talk about that and figure out, okay, what works for what works for you in terms of a couple, like what in terms of time, frequency, and just taking into account like all the different responsibilities they have. But I think at the end of the day, understanding that, yes, that's such a huge piece in a relationship to have that intimacy and sex in there, to make sure that that connection is happening, because it does keep you connected together. So I think that just falls, on the couple, what works for them. They have to decide what works for them in terms of that.
And there are times when your spouse might be more sexually driven than your husband, or wife more driven than a husband. And probably husbands are typically more driven than wives, maybe the way we're built, created. But again, there's no right or wrong in any of those situations. And be able to meet those expectations, be able to plan those things ahead, somebody who maybe is just recently married, for them it could be 3-4 times a week when they're physically connected. Somebody who's been married for 10, 12, 15 years, for them it could be twice a week. Again, the frequency might be changing. Somebody who's been married for 30 years, again, it can change, and depending of where you are, if what's happening in your work, kind of
health
stress
issues,
what kind of stress you might be going through.
And lastly, we have date nights. Yay! So date nights, I think it's really important to continue to date your spouse. I think so many couples stop doing that. They stop dating each other. They stop having fun together. And granted, again, it depends on what stage in your relationship you're at, and you just have to be creative. And one of the things we just started doing is having home dates, where we put the kids down and we have a nice meal, a nice fancy meal with candles and wine. And it's so nice because we're not finding ourselves like rushing to eat dinner because we're trying to feed this kid, we're trying to have this kid eat their vegetables, and it's not really enjoyable. But it just so surprising to know that just even you can create that at home, where you can sit. It was like, oh my gosh, I'm actually enjoying this food. This is really good. It's really important to, again, be intentional
Yeah.
and be creative.
And for us, it's because we have three little kids, and our families live far away. That it's not always kind of conducive for us to be able to find a babysitter. From time to time, we get to ask our friends who can come and watch the kids for a few hours, but there are those times when maybe a spur of the moment and you don't have enough time to plan. And so what, like Nardine mentioned, we start doing is having those, home dates or house dates, whatever you want to call them, where we set things up. We, on purpose, wouldn't eat dinner with the kids because, we trying to
We'll snack and have
snack, maybe
appetizers.
keep that little appetite going, to have dinner, open a good bottle of wine, and simply sit down and talk. And but sometimes you got to get creative, depending on your schedule.
Yeah.
Sometimes you might want to find a time during lunchtime, and maybe you want to sneak from work
Lunch
and
date,
go have a
yeah.
lunch date with your spouse somewhere else. Maybe it's a coffee shop, maybe it's some other restaurant nearby where you guys can meet up and have that one-on-one time, have a quick date, and because those are really awesome to be able to just kind of have a little bit of refreshment in your relationship
Yeah.
through those things.
Yeah, and I think just even for those who may have older kids who may have family nearby that can do that weekly, by no means do it. Have fun,
Yeah.
go do something fun and go be adventurous. I think what happens sometimes too is that couples get in a rut. They do the same thing over and over again. They'll go out to dinner in a movie, but I think what tends to happen is that it's boring. It's like not as fun because what do you do when you start dating? When you first started dating, you did a lot of fun things that you've never done before. So it created this excitement in the relationship. And I think that's part of couples continuing to date each other is being able to do fun things that they've never done before. Just really be adventurous so that you can keep that energy, that excitement in the relationship. And the other piece too is if you can get away for like a night or two, I think that is such an amazing thing to do and that could be a ritual for the
Yeah.
relationship
Yeah.
to maintain that emotional connection, just being able to get away from everything, whether your kids, your job, everything, just leave it behind, be able to have that, even if it's once a year or every 6 months. For those that can, I think that's an amazing opportunity to really truly connect with your spouse.
Just be able to do something like that, get away from your typical routines, and maybe simply doing the same things over and over again. And
Yeah.
it's probably more for couples who have been married for a long time. They may be used to certain things, and it's okay. We talked about rituals. You want to do those things. You want to have those little dates, things that you do together. But if you do find yourself that you want to try something new, one of the things we've never done before. I've never grew up going mountain climbing, right? And neither you did. But something that we did for actually our anniversary, we went
Rock climbing.
rock climbing,
Yeah.
which was kind of cool,
Yeah,
something
that was
different,
fun.
and we had a great time learning something new. I'm probably never gonna go again, but we had a great
That's
time.
new.
We had a great time, and so we will do something different next time. And so you wanna summarize some of the things that we just discussed?
Yeah, so what was it? 5 things.
To prioritize 5 ways
Five
to
ways.
prioritize your marriage. It's not only 5 ways and the ones that you have to do, but some of them that you just pick from time to time and see what applies to your relationship today.
Okay.
So
Rituals. Create
rituals,
rituals.
be able to have a weekly
Weekly
meetings, be able to have daily check-ins, be able to have a sexual
and
intimacy,
intimacy.
and the last one,
Date nights.
date nights. So these are the ones who guys want to leave you with. One important thing is consistency,
Yes.
right? Because if we don't have consistency in any of that,
Yes.
then you kind of start sliding down slowly, and that kind of takes away from the relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. And it can definitely wear on the relationship where you find yourself not as connected and not as excited and not as close. But even if you can't do all five, even if you start out with one, just be consistent. And hopefully, over time, you can build up more and more of some of these tools in order to really enhance your relationship. So we hope these 5 ways for prioritizing your relationship has helped. And we look forward to talking to you some more. And if you have any thoughts in terms of topics that we can talk about, please feel free to let us know what you are wanting to hear in terms of topics. But again, thank you, and we will see you next time.
Take care.